songs, bro, at this point. This is the racing track collab thingy. People hate winter because of the cold, but I don't really mind it. I wonder if my name has anything to do with it. Yes, please. I am not playing Don't Fight the Music. I'm having a good day, actually. Eddie, Eddie. Mhm. Oh my goodness, we're like going past all the Kaido songs today. I really want more Kaido cards. You know what I mean? Oh my gosh, Judas. I could totally complete this on Master. You believe in me, right, Dustin?
I don't know.
Oh my goodness, I love this game. I'm still upset that you deleted it mid play, like mid playthrough, mid song. It's okay. Continue. Leave me alone. Oh my god, why is my hand doing that? That feels weird. I didn't. Well, I mean, I lost my combo, but that one part I just did 100% could be harder. Like, this feels like an expert map. There's nothing hard about this map. I'm just selling, that's all. We love you, Kaido. Yes, King. Can I like at least claim the rewards? Like, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. Yeah, I'm joking. There we go. Oh, oh, that's something. Oh my.
Mid fucking shot.
You know how you scroll through your feed and you see a really good headline, and you click it, you read the article, and it's written pretty well. It has lots of.
When Jalen Johnson joined the Atlanta Hawks in 2021, nobody thought much of him. He came in as a late first-round pick, and despite going to Duke, his lone college year was overshadowed by an abomination of a season. Duke only had a 13-11 record and about to miss the tournament. But then one of their players got COVID, so they ended their season and missed the tournament anyway. Oh, and Jalen Johnson made a baffling decision to literally walk out on his team 2 months into the season and declared for the NBA draft.
Jalen Johnson has decided to opt out of the remainder of the season. For him to opt out now, it's very odd.
It was an insane decision to leave in the middle of the season, but it was backed by his fear of foot problems, with Coach Krzyzewski even saying, quote, "It could be a major factor in his career." Fast forward a bit, and when he actually began his rookie year in the NBA, he spent so much time in the G League. In the brief moments when he was with the team, former coach Nate McMillan told him he probably won't play much because he prioritized John Collins. And then Johnson got left knee tendonitis. It's safe to say he got off to a pretty damn bad start, didn't he? Yet somehow, Jalen Johnson endured this disaster of a rookie season, and a few years later, he's on the verge of superstardom. We thought Trae Young would be the Hawks franchise player for years to come, but with the blink of an eye, they changed course, and he's gone. With Johnson's emergence, he made the Hawks front office feel like Trae Young was now expendable. They started to think, should we build around this guy instead of Trae? So, how did Jalen Johnson do it? How did a guy with such an abysmal start and so many obstacles become one of the best players in the league and the new face of the Atlanta Hawks? Let's take a look.
That turnover, 3 seconds to Jalen.
So I mentioned a few struggles in his early days in the NBA, especially with how long he remained in the G League and how little faith Coach McMillan had in him. Well, most young players would crash out if they heard that, and maybe pout on the bench or even request a trade to a team where they could get more minutes. Not Jalen Johnson. Upon hearing from McMillan that he won't get much playing time, Johnson took it upon himself to stay in the G League longer. He realized he wouldn't get minutes in the NBA, and instead of asking, he started showing. In the G League, Jalen made rapid improvements in his time there, and slowly but surely, he became better. Now, he was never a bad prospect. In fact, he was a 5-star recruit, and at one point, the 13th best prospect in the entire country. But the way he left Duke, he left in bad taste, and his supporters thought he did it strictly out of ego, like he felt he was too good to be playing for a Duke team that was struggling. That probably dropped him a few spots in the draft as well. But by forcing himself to remain in the G League until he got good enough to play in the NBA, it was an act of humility unseen from his peers. We move on to his sophomore year, and this was the first season where he became a permanent member of the Hawks rotation. Now, to say rotation might be a bit generous. In 13 games, he played fewer than 10 minutes. In 12 games, he didn't play at all. And in the games where he did get significant playing time, like over 20 minutes, were the ones where somebody else was injured. The reality was, the Hawks had several young players who played a similar position as Johnson. Besides Collins, there was DeAndre Hunter, and after the trade deadline, Saddiq Bey arrived and ate up even more minutes at the forward spot. All during this time, the Hawks struggled and had no identity. After reaching the conference finals back in 2021, they got bounced in the first round in back-to-back years after that. By the end of Jalen Johnson's sophomore year, there was tension amidst the Hawks organization. It wasn't about him, but about why in the hell is this team so bad now? Was their strategy to build around this trio of Trae Young, John Collins, and DeAndre Hunter actually working? Or did they need a reset? At first, the blame got directed towards Collins. This is a guy who averaged over 20 and 10 by his third year in the league. And the general perception was the future of this franchise would be led by him and Trae Young. Unfortunately, through a combination of injuries and a brief stint with DeJounte Murray, the Hawks became much more perimeter-focused. So Collins experienced a drastic reduction in touches. The Hawks' offense used to be centered around him and Trae, but now it was all about their guards. Instead of being a budding all-star, Collins was now a tool to help their guards score, and he was frustrated. Ultimately, he got traded in the summer of 2023. So how does any of this have to do with Jalen Johnson? Well, when Quinn Snyder took over as the Hawks head coach, he wanted to build a much different kind of offense, kind of like the old Steve Kerr Warriors offense, where you can play 5 out with every player capable of shooting, dribbling, and passing. For example, this is what the Hawks offense turned into. Sometimes there isn't a single Hawk player in the paint. This is where Jalen Johnson comes in. He's better equipped to play in this kind of offense than anyone else on the roster. In fact, as a 6'8" wing player, he's the perfect guy Quinn Snyder envisioned. Unlike Collins, who's a more traditional power forward, Johnson is incredibly versatile. And when he finally got playing time, you could tell he had more potential than any other player on the team. In his first year as a starter, he instantly popped off, averaging nearly 16, 9, and 4, showing off his exceptional instinct for being at the right spot, with great hands to catch even the most difficult of passes. Then you add on his own passing ability. It was the first time the Hawks realized, wow, this guy has great vision too. I mean, that's what he was known for before, but he finally got the chance to use it. Johnson simply had a great feel for the Hawks' offense. It wasn't anything flashy, it's simply knowing where everyone is and where he should be. With his third year being a huge step in the right direction, it got some folks wondering, should he have started a lot sooner, instead of warming the bench his first 2 years? Probably not, honestly, as his time in the G League was critical for his development. However, the one issue that prevented him from truly breaking out until now was health. Remember, I mentioned earlier how Coach Krzyzewski of Duke was concerned about Jalen's injury problems. Well, it turns out he was right. The dude is very injury prone, as you can tell from his extensive history despite being just 24 years old.
We might have one of one on the back here. We might have one of one. That's a 101 true RPA. That's a 101 true RPA.
Ankle problems, wrist problems, hamstring, and other lower body issues. It seems like whenever he gets an injury that doesn't seem like a big deal, he still sits out for an extended period of time. Some even compared his injury woes to Anthony Davis, who seemingly gets injured in the most random ways. Johnson missed 26 games and then 46 games with shoulder surgery. On the bright side, it didn't seem like those injuries impacted his progress, as he used the opportunity during rehab to add another dimension to his game unseen in years past. His first jump involved his three-point shooting, previously a non-existent part of his game, to now being somebody you can't leave wide open anymore. He's not the greatest three-point threat, but he's serviceable enough so guys can't give him 10 feet of space anymore. Then the next jump came with his playmaking. Johnson had always been a decent passer. Coming into the NBA, he was labeled as a point forward, but it was only recently where his team gave him the chance to maximize that skill. By his 5th season, he's made a massive jump to over 8 assists per game, and with the departure of Trae Young, the Hawks made it very clear he is their guy moving forward.
Trae Young exiting the arena. One of the most remarkable chapters in Hawks history will come to an end.
Upon trading away Young for CJ McCollum and Corey Kispert, 2 things resulted from this deal. 1, it created a massive hole at the point guard position. Young was the only true point guard on this roster, yet the Hawks are not concerned about that. They have faith that Jalen Johnson can be the full-time point forward for this team. In fact, after the trade, Johnson admitted that he learned so much from Trae, and analyzed how he always put his teammates above himself. He was somebody who just loved to make everyone around him better. That's one of the things I picked up early from him. Knowing that he'd be the one carrying the franchise into the future, Johnson learned as much as he can from one of the greatest yet underrated passers of his generation. Secondly, the guys they got back, McCollum and Kispert, both are deadly three-point shooters who can help space the floor for Jalen Johnson's ability to get to the rim. Johnson is in the 95th percentile in converting shots at the basket, hitting nearly 80% of his attempts there. Basically, if he has room to get to the basket, it's almost always a bucket. With more shooters to give him space, it'll benefit his greatest skill even more. You could tell the Hawks had this in mind when they made this trade. With very few teams in the Trae Young sweepstakes, they made an effort to get the most ideal players to complement Johnson. It was yet another sign that the keys to the franchise are handed over to him. On paper, it doesn't look like a great deal for the Hawks. I mean, Young is still an all-star level player, with several elite skills that can't be replicated. Perhaps they could have gotten more for Trae than just McCollum's expiring contract and a role player like Corey Kispert. But with the way Trae's season was going and the way his reputation has fallen over the years, his value was at an all-time low. He had his least productive season since his rookie year, and the worst recurring leg injuries of his career. Honestly, I'm not sure they could have done much better. But since he wanted to go to the Wizards, which is a sentence I didn't think I'd ever say, the options were very limited in who they could get back. Apparently, there were rumors that the Miami Heat and Minnesota Timberwolves were also trying to get him, but maybe their offers were even worse than this one. To be fair, I think they did well, with CJ being on an expiring contract and Kispert being a solid young role player on a reasonable salary. This trade gave the team more flexibility to build around Johnson in the future, which is what they truly wanted. Ever since their magical 2021 playoff run, the Hawks have yet to recapture that glory. At one point, it looked like Young was poised to be making deep runs year after year, especially in a relatively weak injury-riddled conference. After a while, however, the Hawks realized his flaws were too apparent to cover. His small stature, the lack of defense, and his response to pressure has been wildly inconsistent. Even his shooting has been very spotty. They didn't want to be stuck rebuilding around a player they were unsure of. Johnson has his own flaws, but his emergence made the team feel comfortable enough to pivot in a different direction. One where they have more trust in an athletic, versatile point forward, as opposed to an undersized point guard who jacks up a ton of shots. The story of Jalen Johnson's rise from prematurely leaving college in the middle of the year to being last on the Hawks depth chart to voluntarily going to the G League and working his way to become the face of the franchise, his whole journey is remarkable. For once, we see a talented young player put his ego aside and quietly work in the background until he got the chance to show it. The Trae Young era is over. Let's see if the Jalen Johnson era can elevate the franchise to a new level of success. Anyway, that's all, folks. Let me know your thoughts on Jalen Johnson's rise to stardom. And what do you think about them getting rid of Trae Young? I know his perception. The average NBA player probably starts off their career slow, then they improve a bit, and then they regress after the age of 30. But some have careers that don't fit the normal timeline, with a trajectory that zigzags all over the place.
Yep, that's me. You're probably wondering how I got in this situation.
It's definitely not what they expected or what any of their fans expected when they first joined the NBA. It makes you wonder, how did these players see their careers end up like this, for better or worse? Today, we're taking a look at 5 NBA players with the strangest career arcs you'll ever see. Hey guys, before we continue, I want to thank SeatGeek for sponsoring this video. The NBA season is in full swing, and in my opinion, this is the most exciting season in a while. And with 35 million downloads, over 70,000 events listed, SeatGeek is the #1 rated ticketing app. NBA viewership has been higher than it's been in years, so if you want to be part of the experience, it's as easy as a few clicks. With SeatGeek, you can see the view of every ticket on your app, and each one is rated on a scale of 1 to 10. Green dots mean they're great deals, while red dots are bad. And you already know I've used SeatGeek multiple times for concerts, basketball games, and so much more. Of course, I got a deal for you guys too. Use 3 is having by far the best season of his entire life, dropping the most points of his career, leading his team in scoring, and elevating the Miami Heat well above their expectations, despite Tyler Hero's foot injuries. But that's not that unusual, right? There's been plenty of players who were late bloomers and peaked later in their career, but the thing is, Norman Powell's entire NBA journey has been wild. From the beginning, Powell entered the 2015 draft as a 4-year college senior, drafted by Milwaukee but immediately traded to Toronto. In the early part of his career, his minutes were spotty, usually playing as a backup behind DeRozan, and later on, Kawhi. His playing time fluctuated, because there was always somebody ahead of him in the rotation. Back then, Dwayne Casey and the coaching staff didn't have their full trust in Powell, and they found it hard to fit him into a role. He's a 6'3" shooting guard.
I can't
after all, and
pause.
never had a single play ran for him. He'd score on his own terms, usually by cutting to the basket or sneaking by the defense, because nobody paid attention to him. Defensively, with the Raptors having small guards like Kyle Lowry and Fred VanVleet, Powell was often tasked to guard players much bigger than him, which made it difficult. However, the die-hard Raptors fanbase wanted him to get more minutes, and it was bound to happen, eventually. Upon Kawhi Leonard's inevitable departure, the team had no choice but to play Norman Powell, and that decision was everything he yearned for. The 2021 season saw him average nearly 20 points a game and played over 30 minutes a game for the first time of his career. In theory, this was perfect for the Raptors, right? You have a guy who improved to the point where he might be a staple of this franchise for years to come. Except, there was a problem. The Raptors were bad. Powell's breakout year was overshadowed by all the injuries that decimated this team. And leading up to the trade deadline, they were in the midst of a 9-game losing streak when rumors surfaced that they were thinking of blowing it up. I mean, that's horrible timing during your breakout year and your team decides to blow it up. One disadvantage of being a 4-year college player is the simple fact that you're older. Powell in his breakout season was almost 28 years old at the time, so the Raptors didn't view him as a young player. In fact, they believed he's already peaked, and that was the best season he'll ever have. So when it was time for an extension, Powell got disheartened when he realized he wasn't going to get one. He stated, "They could have paid me what they paid Gary Trent and kept the band together. I wanted to be with my boys. So yeah, let's go to the negotiation and see what's beneficial for both and see what we can do." This is what Powell said in response after he got traded at the 2021 deadline to Portland for a much younger Gary Trent Jr. And the Raptors chose to give him an extension instead of Powell, believing the 22-year-old Trent had way more potential than Powell ever had. Well, in hindsight, they were completely wrong. Nowadays, Powell is playing his best ball ever, while Trent is dangerously close to falling out of the NBA, despite being 6 years younger. Heck, even in Portland, when Powell proved he could maintain his scoring and three-point shooting at an elite efficiency, and even signing a 4-year, $90 million deal, the Blazers felt the same way about him as the Raptors. They felt he was a good player, but not young enough to be a part of their future as they were also rebuilding. So, once again, Powell got traded at the deadline 1 year later, this time reuniting with Kawhi on the Clippers. This trade meant he would once again be coming off the bench. He was initially upset because it was obvious he was a starting caliber player at this point. In games where he did start, he usually popped off, and eventually when he did become a full-time starter once again, Powell let everyone know this is the potential he's always had, even if it came a bit later than he liked. To go from a bench warmer to a self-made starter, to then traded twice due to not being in his team's future plans, to then going back to the bench on the Clippers, and then proving once again he deserves to start, that is essentially the summary of Powell's career. He's always had to prove he deserves to be out there, and what better way to do this than leading a discombobulated Miami Heat franchise that nobody thought would be this good. Yet he's playing the best ball of his career. Al Horford.
I can't.